Hey everyone, my name is Alexandra and I am a watercolor artist. Welcome to part 10 of my series, Watercolor Wildflowers for Beginners. Today specifically, we are going to go over the do's and don'ts of how to paint watercolor sunflowers. These honestly are some of my favorite flowers to paint, so I'm very excited to do this with you guys. Let's get started. For supplies today, I have 2 cups of water, one for clean, one for dirty water, a napkin for drying my paintbrushes. For paints today, we're using Art Philosophy & Co.'s Terrain palette, and just because we're doing sunflowers, I've also added a brown paint in there as well. The main colors that you'll need is brown, orange, yellow, and some sort of green. For paintbrushes today, I'm using Princeton rounds, numbers 2, 6, and 8. If you have 2 and just one of the bigger sizes, that works great. A pencil just for drawing some guidelines, and paper today we're using Arches 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. So to start, I have painted for you guys a sunflower, and this honestly is good, it's cute, but I want to show you guys how we can take this sunflower and turn it into something that looks a lot more natural and a lot more professional. So first thing that we're going to do is we are going to take our pencil and just draw out our circle for where our flower is going to be, and we'll use that as kind of our center guide. So we're going to start exactly the same as my don't do this flower, and we are going to draw a circle over on the side here. If you guys can do it really light with your pencil, it might be hard to see in the video specifically, but as I start painting, you'll see why I've done that there. So the first thing that we're going to start with is painting our flower petals. In the painting on the left here, I did all of my petals very uniform and very defined with a really bright yellow. To start, we are actually going to do 2 layers of petals. So for our first layer, you guys are welcome to grab either your number 8 or your number 6 brush. Either one is fine. And I am just getting it wet, and I'm going to go into my yellow color here. So one of the differences that I initially have is that this yellow is a little bit more natural looking than the one I used here. This one is very bright, very beautiful, but this one has a bit more of an orange tone mixed in with it. So with my large paintbrush, using my circle as a guide, I am going to paint, putting the tip of my paintbrush down, and I'm making exact same idea as these shapes here, but I'm using a much lighter color. And the main thing that I want you guys to focus on with these petals specifically is that we want to leave very intentional white spaces in between. And equally, when you look at sunflowers, the petals are not all specifically uniform. They're definitely not all the same shape. So I want to be really intentional with that for this flower as well, where I'm going to curve some of them so that they have more of an interesting shape and they look slightly less uniform and defined. And I'm just working my way around, leaving white spaces in between, having some that look more straight, some that are a little bit more curved. Because we're adding a second layer, it doesn't really matter if you feel like you maybe left too much of a white space or not enough, but we will work our way around the circle that we drew. Just because of the nature of how I like to paint sunflowers, we're going to be doing a lot of jumping around so that we can let one layer dry while we move to our next part. So before we go into either the center or the second layer here, we are going to paint in our stem. So for our stem specifically, I am going to my number 2 small brush, and I'll show you the key difference that I'm going to do from the first one. So second tip here, first one we had to paint our petals so that they are not uniform. The second one that we want to focus on is our stem. We don't want it to be completely straight down. We're going to add a little bit of a curve into it. So I'm going to go into my Spanish moss color here. I might even add just a touch of yellow to make it look a little bit more mossy. just a touch of brown to make it a bit darker. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go in between my petals here and starting with a bit of a gap just because I know that I'm going to be painting on top, I'm going to paint my line down, and I've added a slight curve to this. Now that I've done that, we are going to go into our leaves right away. So for our leaves, I'm taking my number 8 brush again, and I'm going into those same colors, one with adding a little bit of brown to it just to make it a bit more mossy. So the third thing you'll notice with my leaves here, I have them really straight and kind of angling the same way. Often when you see sunflowers, the leaves are drooping down. So the third thing to make our sunflowers more natural is going to be painting our nice big leaves, not necessarily pointing up. We're going to have them drooping slightly down. So instead of starting up here, I'm starting with my brush angled down, and I'm going to work my way up. I'm applying pressure to get that nice thick line. Same on the bottom here. I often like to paint my leaves with a bit of a white space in the middle just to add depth to them. So I am doing that. If you want, you can add a slight jagged edge. I'm just using the tip of my brush to do that. And while it's wet, I really enjoy using a wet on wet technique and just adding some depth. So I'm mixing some green and some brown and a little bit of blue just to get kind of a deeper blend of colors. And I can go right in and add that in. If I want while I'm here, I can also take my small brush just because it's nice and clean and add in a little bit of yellow. As this dries, it's just going to give it a really neat, textured, more natural look. So I've done that on the one side. I've left a little bit of a gap between my leaf and my stem. And now we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side. So I'm going to stagger them a little bit just because I don't want them in the exact same spot. So this one I'm going to put a little higher up. And if I want it to curl up a bit at the end, I can do that. Now I'll come from this side. And then we'll finish our leaf by painting the second half here. Attach it. And then as I did with the first one, I'm going to give my leaf just a slight jagged edge, give it a bit more of a natural look. And then we'll go in and using our wet on wet technique, add in a little bit more depth of color. So right away, you'll notice the difference on each side, where it gives it a much more natural look just with the way that it drapes. And then going in with my yellow, I'm not adding a lot. I just want to see a little bit of that difference when it dries. And while I have my small brush here, I'll go in back into my green, and I'm going to paint the lines just to connect it to the stem. And whoops, accidentally put my finger on there, so I will blend that out just a little bit. We're going to add some more details so you won't quite notice that soon. If I wanted to, I can add a third leaf. For our purposes today, I'm just going to keep it to the 2. So now that I've done that, we are going to go and paint our second layer of petals. This time, because I would like to have a little bit more control over my brush, I am going to my number 6 instead of my number 8. I'm going back into my yellow paint here in my palette. If you want, you're welcome to mix it with a little bit of orange. I find that the yellow in this art philosophy palette is vibrant enough. This time I would like it less watered down and more pigmented, and we're sticking with that same concept switch that we had for the first one, where our petals are going to be less uniform and we're going to just let them flow a little more freely. So I'm going in between the two that I've already painted. And I'm just adding my petals there, stopping them when they get to that center circle that I drew. Now I'm working relatively quickly with this just because I want to jump in with the brown right away. And for our purposes today, we're going to do a little bit more of a loose watercolor flower look. So we'll use a little bit more blending. And it's okay if some of our petals overlap over each other. Go around my leaf there. And now working relatively quickly, I am going to go straight into the center, starting by painting water into the middle. So I'm doing a circle of water. I'm making sure that if I was to lift my paper up, it would not drip down. If you find you have too much water, feel free to just pick some up with your brush. So I'm adding that into the middle. I don't mind if my yellow bleeds in just a little bit. And then I'm going to go into my brown paint right away. And I'm just going to start by dotting it around the outside. So we have our petals painted differently, our stem differently, our leaves, and now for the center, I want to really focus on not fully saturating it, but I want to be able to see the difference between the very center of the sunflower that you often notice when you're actually looking at them seems darker. So we're going to go into the middle and paint it in. Because I'm using a wet on wet technique, I'm giving this all the opportunity to really allow the paint colors to mix. So our fourth thing is that we are not fully painting in a brown circle, but we're being very intentional to leave white space. And if it bleeds in with our yellow petals, I totally don't mind. So now I'm gonna go rinse my brush, and I don't want these colors to fully mix, but I do want my browns to look slightly more cohesive. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going in with a tiny, tiny bit of orange paint, but my brush is relatively watered down. And I am just going to paint in between where I've done these two. And that's just going to allow the colors to blend together. So now if I want to go in with a little bit more, give myself more of an orange brown there, and I can just add to this, working on bringing the color in, but still leaving that separation so that there's enough depth. And then once this dries, we're going to go in and we'll add a whole other level of detail. So I'm happy with how that's looking. Now I'm going to let that dry, and we're going to add some detail to our leaves. So at this point, a lot of the detail is sort of just extra steps to really add a whole other level to our sunflowers. So with my small brush, I'm going to go back into my green paint, and I personally love this technique for adding detail to things like leaves, where we're going to use a tone on tone technique here. And I am going to get some green on my brush. I don't want it to be too pigmented, so it's slightly watery, but I do make sure that I have enough paint on my brush. As many of you guys know that have been watching my videos, my way to do that is by testing it on my napkin. So now that I've done that, I'm happy with the color. I'm just going to move this out of the way for a second. I am going to go into my leaf, and I am painting a line down the center all the way to the end. And these are going to work as the veins. And then on either side, I'm going to add little lines for the veins of the leaf. I'm making sure to stagger them, making sure they're not super uniform. Again, this is just going to ensure that you have a much more natural looking leaf. So same thing on the other side, using that tone on tone technique. And at this point, this is just added details that are really going to make your flower stand out from something that you might have painted in the past. So these are all really simple and easy ways to bring your flower up to the next level. So while I still have this same green, I'm actually going to pick a side of my stem and just add in some of that color to add a little bit of depth, a little bit of shading. For even more, I sometimes like to go in with a touch of brown or even red that is really super watered down and just add it in very subtly using a bit of a glazing technique, which is just going to make the green stand out more without you really even realizing that there is red on your paper. So we've done that now. Now we can add some more detail into our petals. So I'll bring my palette back, sticking with my small brush here. I'm gonna start by going into a watered down version of this yellow. And I'm just gonna go into these petals that are in behind. And I'm just painting some strokes to give it the illusion of some shading, as well as make it slightly more cohesive with what is in front. You really don't need to be too particular with this. I'm not covering the whole petal. I'm just sort of going in between. Oops, that one was far too dark, so we'll go in, we'll add some water there. And I'll carry that color out into some of my other petals. All right, so now that I've done that with these ones that are in front, I'm going directly into my yellow, making sure it's nice and dark when checking on my napkin here. And I'm just gonna add 1 or 2 lines coming up each petal. And this is just to give it kind of the illusion that it has some more shape to it. And like, using this tone on tone method is a really, really simple way to add some really nice details. So now that I've done that, details are on my leaves, details are on my petals. My center here is still looking slightly disjointed. So we are going to fix that. Sticking with my small brush, I'm going into my brown. This brown specifically has a very cool undertone and I really would like to warm it up. So going onto my palette here, I'm going to mix it with some orange. And right away that warms it up. That'll make it look much more cohesive with the yellow. So now that I've done that, it's sort of a milky consistency. I am going to go in and I am going to dot around the edge of my sunflower. And we're doing this for sort of what looks like where the seeds would be. And it's just gonna tie in that color much better. And then I'm gonna do the same thing, but I don't mind if I go slightly darker into the center. But I'm still trying to be careful to leave a little bit of space in between to separate the two. If you feel like they're too disjointed still, you can go with your water and just blend that out just a little bit. And then if I want to, I can take this brown again and make the edges even darker. Now at this point, this is where I would stop and leave the center. I like how it looks. I like the difference in definition. As it dries, it's going to dry slightly lighter and you'll find that it will blend even better. So before we finish, I will cover our key differences one more time that we made between our basic sunflower and our advanced sunflower. So for the basic one, I had all of my petals very uniform. So our first don't is painting all the petals facing the same way, same size. Our do is to have them at different angles to layer them to really build the sunflower to make it full. Our second don't is painting your stem perfectly straight. What we want to do is add a little bit of a natural curve to it. Our third don't, you guys kind of get the trend here, is painting our leaves really uniform and angled upwards. Sunflowers specifically are very big leaves, often drooping, so our do is to paint them drooping down with a lot more shape and natural flow to them. And lastly, our don't is painting the center of your flower completely brown, flat, and one color. Do use a wet on wet technique, focus on getting the edges and the center darker so that you sort of have this ring around that gives it a really nice 3D effect, as well as dotting in your color to give the effect of the seeds. That is all we have for our do's and don'ts of painting a watercolor sunflower. If there's anything else that you guys want to learn how to do differently, how to take to more of an advanced level, make sure that you comment below and let me know. Also, if you guys did follow along, I would love to see what you're painting, so please take a picture, email me, or tag me on Instagram at Alexandra Victoria Studio. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this channel and like this video. We'll see you next time.